Imagine driving like 90 miles an hour down the highway and suddenly your car decides to just swap out its own engine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it changes its tires and it completely reroutes its GPS all while you are still behind the wheel.
Right, which sounds terrifying.
It is. And if you try to govern that vehicle by, pulling it over for an annual safety inspection, you are going to get run over.
You definitely are.
And that chaotic high-speed mutation is exactly what governing artificial intelligence feels like today.
It really is. I
Yes.
mean, there's just this fundamental mismatch right now between the speed of the technology and the speed of the oversight.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Today is Wednesday, March 25, 2026.
Yes, it is.
And right now, basically the entire cybersecurity world is crowded into the Moscone Center in San Francisco for the RSA Conference.
Which is always a huge event.
Always. And the theme for RSAC this week is the power of community, which, is highly relevant right now because the industry is finally waking up to a pretty hard truth.
Right. The realization that we can't govern this rapidly evolving technology in, isolated, siloed departments anymore.
Exactly. The old rule books simply do not apply.
They don't. And I think the mission for our deep dive today is to really understand why AI is breaking those traditional corporate rule books.
Right.
And more importantly, how the smartest companies are rewriting those rules on the fly without slowing down their own innovation.
Because you can't just hit the brakes on the highway.
Exactly. To understand how we fix this 90-mile-an-hour moving vehicle, we first have to look at what is actually happening on the RSAC Expo floor right now. Because it makes our old tools look like total relics.
Yeah, if you walk that expo floor today, the terminology alone shows how far things have shifted.
Oh, absolutely.
We're moving way away from basic chatbots and looking at what they're calling agentic AI.
Right, agentic.
And for anyone unfamiliar with that term, agentic AI refers to systems that don't just, answer your questions, they actually take actions.
Right, they can navigate software, they execute workflows, and they make decisions autonomously.
Which is wild. And governing something that takes its own actions requires a completely different approach.
It really does.
Yeah.
And we are seeing live production-ready tools built specifically for this at the conference.
Like what? Give me an example.
So, for instance, telemetry-driven monitoring platforms.
Okay.
These are systems that continuously collect real-time data from AI models. They do not wait for a quarterly review.
They're just always watching.
Right. They monitor the statistical distribution of the model's outputs millisecond by millisecond. So they flag anomalies the instant they occur.
That's incredibly fast. And we're also looking at automated evidence collection, right?
Yes.
Because historically, if an auditor wanted to check a system, they had to go ask an engineer to manually take screenshots of a dashboard.
Oh, the screenshots. So painful.
Just to prove a control was working. But now the system just pulls the back-end logs and approval records automatically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think the most impressive development is the deployment of real-time runtime guardrails.
Oh, yeah. Runtime guardrails are fascinating from an engineering perspective.
They really are. Do you want to explain how they work?
Yeah, so basically how a runtime guardrail works is you place a secondary, much smaller, highly specialized AI model right in front of your main application.
Kind of like a filter.
Exactly. Its entire job is to act as a bouncer. It scans a user's prompt in a fraction of a millisecond.
Right.
And if it detects toxicity or, an attempt to manipulate the system, it just blocks the prompt before it ever even reaches the expensive main AI model.
It's so efficient.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is these controls aren't just bolted on at the end of the process anymore.
No, they're being embedded directly into CI/CD pipelines.
Right, the continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline.
Which is basically the automated software assembly line where developers build, test, and ship their code. So the governance is happening natively inside the daily workflow.
But here's the massive disconnect. Right. Despite these cutting-edge tools being available today, a huge number of enterprise governance, risk, and compliance programs, GRC for short, are totally stuck in 2018.
Yeah, they're managing risk on static, quarterly spreadsheets.
Exactly. Spreadsheets that lag behind the actual business reality by, months.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
I want to push back on behalf of everyone listening who might be feeling a bit of, AI fatigue right now.
Totally understandable.
Because at the end of the day, isn't an AI model just another piece of software? I mean, we managed the massive enterprise shift to the cloud computing model.
We did.
We survived the mobile app revolution. We figured out how to secure all of that. So why is AI so fundamentally different that a spreadsheet or an annual risk assessment is completely breaking down?
That is the big question. And the answer is that the underlying architecture of what we are building has fundamentally changed.
How so?
Well, during the shift to the cloud or the mobile app era, we were governing what you'd call discrete systems.
Okay, discrete systems.
Right. You had an application. It had a set of code written by a human. You tested that specific code, and you deployed it. It was deterministic.
Meaning, if you gave it input A, it would always produce output B.
Exactly. It was a static, bounded entity.
Right. The code only did what you explicitly programmed it to do.
But with modern AI, we are no longer governing a discrete piece of software. We are governing a socio-technical AI system.
Okay, wait. Socio-technical. That is a very dense phrase.
It is a bit jargon-heavy, yeah.
Can you break down the socio-technical part of that for us?
Absolutely. So a socio-technical system means the technology literally cannot be separated from the human and environmental factors surrounding it.
Okay.
The system is not just the code anymore. It's the underlying foundational models. It's the massive data sets used for training.
Right. All the data.
Yeah, and it's the real-time inference data flowing in. It includes the pipelines, the system prompts, and crucially, the highly unpredictable ways that human users interact with it.
Because users will always find a way to use a tool that the developers never intended.
Always. It's a guarantee. And none of these pieces stay still. A socio-technical system is continuously evolving.
Right.
You have developers retraining the model, fine-tuning it for specific tasks, experimenting with new configurations on a weekly or even daily basis.
So, if the actual thing we are trying to govern has mutated from a predictable application into this living, non-deterministic system,
Yes.
that completely changes the nature of the risk itself. You just cannot use a static spreadsheet to govern a living system.
You can't. Which brings us to the specific ways this technology breaks traditional risk models.
Let's get into the realities.
Right, so the first major reality is accelerated change risk.
Okay.
Traditional corporate controls assume a relatively stable world. You plan a software release, you document the requirements, and things rarely drift off course without a formal meeting.
Right, the old way.
But AI turns that upside down.
Because the models themselves drift. I mean, the real world changes, so the data the model relies on becomes stale or inaccurate. Like, a model trained on financial data from 2023 is going to start giving very strange answers in 2026 if it is not constantly updated.
Spot on. And it's not just the data changing. Developers are constantly tweaking hyperparameters.
Hyperparameters.
Yeah, they are essentially the underlying knobs and dials that control how the AI learns and processes information.
Right.
And tweaking those can fundamentally alter the model's behavior. And it's often done rapidly, completely outside of any formal change management review.
And then you add the human element back in. We see this all the time. Employees invent shadow workflows in a matter of days.
Shadow workflows are a huge issue.
Yeah. They figure out a novel way to use an internal AI tool to automate part of their job, and suddenly the entire accounting department is relying on a workflow that the IT and security teams do not even know exists.
Exactly. The biggest danger is not some sci-fi rogue AI.
Right.
It is that the AI and how it is used changes faster than traditional governance, can even schedule a meeting to talk about it.
That is terrifying.
It is. And this speed of change forces an evolution in how we view compliance. We're having to move from procedural compliance to behavioral compliance.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Sure. Old school GRC relies heavily on procedures and documents. Signed policies, approval tickets, a PDF document where a vendor promises their software is safe.
Right. Procedural compliance is kind of like raising a teenager and having them sign a safe driving contract before you hand them the keys to the car.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy.
You put the signed paper in a drawer and you just, hope for the best.
Right. It is entirely theoretical safety.
Yeah.
But AI demands proof that safety mechanisms actually work in practice, which is behavioral compliance.
So going back to the teenager analogy.
Yeah.
Behavioral compliance is putting a telemetry tracker in the car.
Exactly.
You do not just trust the contract, you look at the real-time behavior. Did they actually stop at the red light? Are they speeding? And applied to AI, you need to know, are users bypassing the safe paths we built? Are harmful outputs actually being caught by the system? And is that data being used to improve the guardrails?
That is exactly it. And that behavioral focus is driving a massive shift toward new global standards, specifically ISO IEC 42001.
Okay.
That's the new international standard for AI management systems, and it totally departs from the old checklist mentality. It heavily emphasizes ongoing risk treatment and continual improvement based on live feedback.
Which naturally brings up the question of regulation.
Right.
Because we have these international standards, but what are governments actually mandating? The landscape is incredibly fragmented right now.
It really is a mixed picture globally. In Europe, the EU AI Act is rolling out in phases.
Right.
The major obligations for what they categorize as high-risk systems, so things like AI used in hiring, law enforcement, critical infrastructure, those start kicking in around August 2026.
Okay, so that's coming up fast. But here in the U.S., the approach has been completely different.
Very different.
The 2023 Executive Order on AI was rescinded.
Right.
However, even though it's no longer officially on the books, it heavily shaped voluntary practices and agency expectations across the industry. Plus, individual states are writing their own rules, which is creating a real patchwork of localized regulations.
Exactly. And the impartial takeaway from the analysts at RSAC is this. Whether you are dealing with the EU AI Act, state laws, or voluntary frameworks, checking the regulatory boxes is necessary to avoid fines.
Right, you have to do it.
But compliance does not equal security.
Say that again?
Compliance does not equal security. Meeting a regulatory requirement is nowhere near enough to guarantee that you're creating safe, resilient AI in a production environment.
Right.
That actual day-to-day responsibility lands squarely on the shoulders of internal engineering and governance teams.
Because you cannot legislate away the technical complexity.
No, you can't.
You still have to build the telemetry tracker and put it in the car, but installing that tracker, to stick with the analogy, requires massive effort, deep technical integration, and serious budget.
Absolutely.
So if you tell a seasoned compliance officer today that they need to completely rewrite their playbook and abandon their spreadsheets, they are going to push back.
Oh, they definitely will.
Yeah.
And the counter-argument for mature GRC programs is very predictable.
What do they say?
They will argue they already handle change management, they already do vendor risk reviews, they already secure the software development lifecycle.
Right.
They view AI as just another technology, and they genuinely believe their legacy building blocks are sufficient to govern it.
And are they entirely wrong?
Well, they are wrong about the velocity.
Okay.
The building blocks do exist, but they were built for deterministic software. Like a traditional vendor risk review might take 3 weeks.
Right.
An AI model might be updated 3 times a week.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge difference.
Legacy tools just require too much manual intervention to handle the emergent, unpredictable outcomes of agentic AI.
Okay, so let's talk about the costs and cures of modernizing then. If a company decides to rip off the Band-Aid and build a telemetry-first governance program, what are the actual benefits?
So when you rewrite your GRC for the AI era, your governance finally aligns with how AI is actually built.
Right.
You get strong, defensible audit trails, systematic logs of every decision the model makes, rather than, hunting through emails for approvals.
Which nobody wants to do.
Exactly. And interestingly, this approach fundamentally improves the relationship between compliance and engineering.
Really? How so?
Well, when governance is automated and mathematically proven in the code, it feels like a quality feature to the developers. It stops being a bureaucratic hurdle.
Oh, that makes total sense. But the transition is not free.
No, not at all. It requires severe upskilling.
Right.
A traditional compliance team now needs to understand machine learning life cycles, data provenance, prompt engineering.
That's a lot of new terminology to learn.
It is. You have to shift the entire corporate culture away from document-first evidence toward telemetry-first evidence. And perhaps the most difficult hurdle, it demands crystal clear cross-department ownership.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Product managers, data scientists, security engineers, legal counsel, and compliance officers all have to own this risk together.
Yes.
Hold on, I want to dig into that. If legal, security, product, data science, and compliance all have equal ownership, doesn't that just guarantee the whole process devolves into a massive, slow-moving committee?
That is the fear. Yes.
I mean, if a developer has to get sign-off from 5 different departments to push an update to an AI model, you lose all the speed advantages of using AI in the first place.
Exactly.
So how do you achieve speed with controls without getting bogged down by too many cooks in the kitchen?
This is exactly where organizations fail if they try to use old management styles for new tech. You simply cannot form a giant oversight committee and expect it to work.
Right.
The proven solution is creating a dedicated platform engineering team.
Okay, so how does a platform team bypass the committee bottleneck?
A platform team builds what we call a paved road.
A paved road.
Yes, they create a standardized infrastructure with the compliance guardrails already baked into it.
Yeah.
So legal and security dictate the rules once, and the platform team writes those rules directly into the deployment pipeline.
Oh, I see.
So when a data scientist wants to launch a new model, they do not go ask a committee for permission. They deploy it on the paved road.
Right.
If their model meets all the automated checks, it goes live instantly. If it fails, the pipeline blocks it automatically. The approval is mathematically proven in the code.
That's brilliant.
It is. But this only works if executive leadership actively prevents managers from demanding manual sign-offs and, genuinely supports a culture of automated controls.
Right. Leadership has to buy in. So we know that the traditional methods are broken. We understand the realities of non-deterministic risk.
Yes.
And we know we need to avoid the committee trap by building automated paved roads. If you are listening to this right now and realize your company's AI governance is lagging, what is the actual 90 to 120-day survival guide?
Well, the experts on the RSAC floor have distilled this down to 5 foundational priorities. This is basically the minimum viable AI governance system for 2026.
All right, let's hear them.
Priority number 1 is continuous AI inventory and risk tiering.
Which means finally throwing away the manual spreadsheet.
Yes, please throw it away.
Sure.
You must deploy automated discovery tools that scan your network environment to find out exactly where AI is being used.
Right.
You need to know what application programming interfaces or APIs are calling out to external models, what internal data they are touching, and automatically categorize them as low, medium, or high risk based on their function.
Let's ground these 5 priorities in a real-world scenario so we can see how the technology actually works.
Okay, good idea.
Let's say a financial company builds an AI customer service agent. It is an agentic AI that can review a customer's account history, approve a refund, or even authorize a small line of credit automatically.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. So step 1, inventory. Is the automated system flagging that this credit approval bot exists and tagging it as high risk because it touches financial data?
Exactly.
Right.
And to use a restaurant analogy, inventory is like knowing exactly what ingredients are in the restaurant's fridge at all times.
Perfect.
Priority number 2 is traceability, also known as lineage.
Okay, lineage.
If that customer service AI suddenly starts approving fraudulent refunds, you need to be able to answer what changed, when, and why.
Right.
That requires version model registries. You need a complete history of the system prompts and a clear record of exactly which data set trained the model on that specific day.
So sticking with the restaurant, lineage is documenting the entire recipe history. You need to trace the bad behavior back to the source code or the source data without guessing.
Exactly. Priority 3 is pre-deployment evaluations.
Okay.
Before that financial bot is ever allowed to interact with a real customer, it must be aggressively tested. This is where you conduct red teaming, intentionally trying to trick the AI into breaking its own rules.
Yeah, try to break it.
You test it for bias to ensure it does not deny credit based on demographic factors, and run ethical safety checks to ensure it aligns with corporate values.
Which is like the chef tasting the dish before it leaves the kitchen. You try to break the AI in a safe sandbox before a hacker tries to break it in the real world.
That's a great way to put it. Now, priority 4 is runtime monitoring and incident response.
Okay.
This is perhaps the most critical shift. Once the financial bot goes live, you have to watch it continuously.
Right. This is where those real-time guardrails come in.
Exactly. You are monitoring for model drift to see if the AI's financial decisions start deviating from baseline logic over time.
Wow.
And you have a fast triage loop, so if the bot starts acting erratically, the runtime bouncer AI automatically shuts off its access to the refund database within milliseconds.
Which is like watching the diner's face when they take a bite of the food. You do not wait for a customer to formally complain. The system detects the anomaly and quarantines itself instantly.
Yes, exactly. And finally, priority 5, smarter third-party due diligence.
Okay.
Because most companies do not build foundational AI models from scratch. They buy access to them from vendors.
Right. It's too expensive to build your own.
Exactly. Now, in the past, you would ask a vendor for a SOC2 report. That is a standard security audit report every software company provides to prove they have basic firewalls and access controls.
Right. Standard procedure. But a standard security report does not tell you anything about how an AI model makes decisions, does it?
No, it doesn't. You have to go much deeper.
Like inspecting the farm where you bought the meat for the restaurant.
Exactly. You need to know the provenance of the data the vendor used to train their model. You need to know how they handle your proprietary data when you send it to them via an API.
Do they use your data to train their future models?
Right. And if you do not know the answer to that, you have a massive blind spot.
Wow. So, to summarize the survival guide for our AI financial bot,
Yeah.
auto-discovered on the network, trace its training lineage, try to break it before launch, use an automated bouncer to monitor it in real time, and aggressively audit the vendors supplying the underlying tech.
That is the complete life cycle.
Incredible.
And to hold all of these steps together, the consensus recommendation is to use the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, the AI RMF, as your organizational backbone.
NIST framework.
Yes. It is built around 4 highly practical functions: govern, map, measure, and manage. It provides a structured way to assign these specific technical controls to broader business objectives.
But making this framework function in the real world requires a very specific split in responsibilities between the technical teams and the executive suite, right?
It does. On the ground level,
Yeah.
your analysts and engineers need a streamlined single intake process. They need those auto-generated evidence packages we talked about earlier so they can work fast without filling out paperwork. But at the top level, leadership has to step up.
Because the automated tools can give you data, but leadership has to make the hard calls on what the organization's actual risk tolerance is.
Exactly. You can automate a guardrail, but you cannot automate strategic courage or, human judgment.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the ultimate takeaway from the floor of the RSA conference is that AI is not a threat to governance, risk, and compliance.
No, it's not.
AI is simply exposing the lazy, static, velocity-agnostic versions of governance that have been holding the industry back for years. It is forcing unnecessary evolution.
It really is. And whether you are an engineer writing the deployment pipelines, a product manager overseeing a new feature, or just someone who wants to understand how the corporate world is handling this technological revolution.
The core lesson applies to you.
It does. The systems we build and the systems we interact with every single day are no longer static tools. They are living, breathing, socio-technical systems.
Right.
They learn, they drift, they interact with unpredictable human behavior. And because of that, they require continuous automated behavioral oversight.
Because you cannot govern a non-deterministic system with a static spreadsheet. It is mathematically impossible.
It really is. But before we conclude, there's one final, somewhat provocative thought that emerges when you look at the long-term trajectory of these telemetry-driven tools. Well, we have spent this entire deep dive discussing the need to build automated, highly intelligent guardrails to govern our AI systems.
Right.
But as these guardrails themselves become more complex, more autonomous, and more agentic, at what point will the AI guardrails require their own AI to govern them?
Oh, wow.
Right. As we shift entirely to runtime monitoring and autonomous security platforms, we really have to ask the ultimate question: who or what is going to watch the automated watchers?
That is an incredible paradox to consider. The telemetry tracker we put in the car to monitor behavior eventually becomes so advanced that it starts making its own decisions.
Yeah.
And suddenly, we need a second tracker just to monitor the first one. It introduces an entirely new, recursive layer of risk.
It is the next inevitable frontier of the socio-technical challenge. We are solving today's speed problem by building autonomous systems that will create tomorrow's governance problem.
Well, that is definitely a massive concept for you to chew on.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the rapidly shifting landscape of AI governance and the end of the traditional corporate rulebook.
Thanks for listening.
We hope this exploration helped clarify the mechanisms behind the technology and the very real stakes involved. Keep questioning the systems around you. Always look under the hood to see how the technology actually works. And whatever you do, do not try to inspect a car while it is driving 90 miles an hour down the highway. We will catch you next time.